Barton Mansion, California. Coming up first today on our list of ghost videos that'll change your tune is an old classic, and to date, one of the best pieces of paranormal footage I've ever seen. I remember watching this one a while ago. It is a bit of an older clip, but it is an absolute classic. Maybe you could use a refresher, maybe you've never seen it. Two paranormal investigators were filming themselves investigating the Barton Mansion, a famous haunted house just outside of Los Angeles. In 1859, Dr. Benjamin Barton and his family purchased 640 acres of San Bernardino land for a reasonable sum of $500. That's probably the scariest part of this story. I literally do pay $1,200 for a basement. Barton came to turn the property into a successful vineyard and winery, retiring from the practice of medicine entirely. Benjamin would then begin construction on a mansion, building it with clay that came directly from a nearby gravesite. Bad move. Almost immediately after the construction of the house, Barton's wife collapsed and succumbed to illness. Barton would become a recluse and shut himself inside the manor, with rumors spiraling outwards of Barton becoming engrossed with magic and satanic practices to try and revive his wife. Rumors would be told of loud noises and red lights piercing through the windows of the mansion. These days, nearby residents have reported seeing hooded figures entering and leaving, as well as finding discarded animal bodies near the property, insinuating that absolutely nothing good is happening in there. The Barton Mansion would become far more famous when a pair of paranormal investigators went into the long abandoned mansion to try and uncover some of the legends. In this clip, as they're exploring on the staircase, they turn and see the apparition of a tall, terrifyingly pale demonic creature. A ghost? Barton's late wife, Barton himself? Not looking to find out, the investigators double time it out of there. The genuine fear from the investigators' voices makes it seem really real. Like I said, to date, one of the best paranormal videos on the internet. But it's only number 5, so you could imagine I got 4 great ones coming up for you. But before we dive right on into that, I'd like to ask, if you enjoy the channel, you like what we do here, why not toss us a subscribe, hit that little bell so you don't miss a single scream. We've got scary videos on just about anything you can think of. If you can think it up, odds are good we've done 2 to 3 on it. We got videos on everything freaky under the sun and above it. But do that at the end of this video, okay? Because I got 4 more stories coming up for you right now. Number 4, Ghost Girl. Coming up next, another true vintage. I'm like a sommelier for ghost videos. This video uploaded to YouTube titled Ghost Girl. Straight, plain and simple. In it, we get a first-person view of a paranormal investigator wandering through a house. The atmosphere is thick, and there's a sense of dread in the air, even without being there yourself. Just seeing the video is enough to make your hair stand up. As the camera creeps upward, the investigator slowly moves forward down the hallway, peering through a crack in the door at what looks to be the shape of a young girl sitting in the hallway. That's my least favorite thing for a ghost to be. I don't know why, that's just the scariest one. The ring, yeah, I don't know. The shadows seem humanoid, and maybe it's just your brain filling in the details, but it definitely looks like there's a person in front of whoever's filming. If you listen carefully, it sounds too like you can make out the sounds of weeping or crying, a sad ghost. The video pushes forward for its horrifying conclusion when you see the door open again, and you're treated to an up-close and personal view of what is unmistakably a small ghost standing up. Definitely Sadako vibes. Now, it's a fairly old video, so I was hoping I could dig up a bit of context around it and see if I could get some backstory and get to the bottom of this clip. But clicking through on the channel that it uploaded, all we could really find was a few videos of a pretty cute little cat and little else in the way of paranormal content, or really ever any explanation at all. So was this a real ghost caught on camera and it's never been topped, or was this just a hoax to drum up some attention back on the early days of YouTube when things were nice and good? On a side note, does anyone else out there really miss that sort of sweet spot of when YouTube first started out and ghost videos were mostly like this? Some blurry footage of someone walking around a house that you and your dad would talk about whether it was real or a hoax or not for weeks. Maybe I'm just waxing nostalgic entirely lately, but I miss the really blurry low-res era of ghost videos.
Coming in at number 3, Dreamwater Lounge. And we're going back to England again because we all know that's where the spookiest stuff happens, right? In 2015, some pretty unnerving CCTV footage was captured at the Dreamwater Lounge wine bar in Stockton Heath, Cheshire, following decades of reports from staff of strange happenings on the property who regularly complained of an unsettling feeling throughout. Well, at 1 minute 15, the CCTV camera captures what appears to be an incredibly clear silhouette of a figure moving throughout the corridor before disappearing and the camera shaking back to normality. Well, horror fans, I've got to be honest with you, the reason that I chose this clip for our number 3 spot, right in the middle, is because, well, it's a fake. A very good fake, but still an obviously doctored piece with some very clear tampered editing to propagate a paranormal story. Remember, it's important to be vigilant when facing the unexplainable. At 37 seconds when the lights cut, it appears to rain on the camera. However, the streak marks seem to take away the hard-coded date and timestamp, which just doesn't happen. It's not on the camera lens in any way, unless the spirit possesses the power to cause digital precipitation, which, who knows? Well, we will leave the link to this video in the info box so you can check it out for yourself and let us know your thoughts in the comment box down below. Next up at number 2, Gettysburg Ghosts.
Right there. See? Look.
There's nobody there.
Which, compared to our previous point, is definitely a video that myself, as well as the majority of the internet, find incredibly difficult to explain away because it's just so weird, and the perfect example of a difficult to explain ghost video. This is heralded by many as the most genuine paranormal footage ever captured, and has held that title ever since it was filmed way back when, in November of 2001. Husband and wife duo Delia and Tim Underwood were visiting the triangular field at Gettysburg on a day trip with their grandchildren, when after filming the site they noticed something appear along the tree line. Shapes, figures, almost too clear to be true figures of what appeared to be American Civil War soldiers moving in formation. Now, I'm going to level with you guys, I've tried to look as critically as possible at this footage and I'm still stumped. The video quality is low at best, which would make any post editing pretty obvious. There's none of that. Other than several very unlikely lens flares, I don't have an explanation. Check it out for yourselves and let us know your thoughts in the comment box down below. And finally, at our number 1 spot, thing in the hallway. Now, it's important to remember that this piece of footage was made for entertainment, but still, I think the possibility of it being tampered with is incredibly low, and nevertheless, it doesn't make it any less terrifyingly weird. Ghost Stalkers, a short-lived paranormal documentary series from veteran investigator John E.L. Tenney, featured an episode where himself and his assistant spent the night alone in violently haunted locations. It's important to note that this episode was the only television show to ever capture a full-body apparition on camera, and that's kind of a big deal. The figure that has now become known as the Tall Man was filmed inside the Old Taylor Memorial Hospital in Hawkinsville, Georgia, a notorious hotspot for the paranormal, and well, I'm pretty sure the show's creators couldn't believe their eyes after capturing one of the most chilling pieces of paranormal evidence ever. Again, we'll leave the link in the info box down below so you can check it out in full. Yeah, that's some pretty spooky stuff.
Number 5, Brazil. Coming up first on our list of ghost footage that's been freaking out the pros and spooking the amateurs alike is this bizarre clip captured and uploaded to the internet by one Mr. Miracle BR. Thank you, Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle shared this, and we're glad they did, even if it does have us questioning the nature of our reality ever so slightly. The footage appears to be a body camera footage of a police raid in Brazil, where a group of plainclothed officers are ready to kick down doors to deal with whatever's hiding inside. Of course, they might just be the wrong emergency department to call, as it seems like the Ghostbusters might have been a lot more appropriate. Take a look now. When they kick in that door, either they used a little bit too much force, or there's something in there they're not going to be able to put handcuffs on. The door keeps banging, swinging rapidly and violently back and forth in place. Whatever's going on with this one door seems to be present on all the doors in this warehouse, as every door they pass through starts swinging violently as if it's got a mind of their own, leading to the men getting understandably jumpy. You know, the academy doesn't teach you how to deal with ghosts. They start looking over their shoulders over and over, and the video cuts pretty short when the men start to dart down the hall, running away in a flurry. Running away from what, I wonder? Now, this clip alone is already pretty unsettling. Imagine, even with you and your squad, well trained, heavily armed, I still think seeing something you can't explain would have me on edge in a building that already looks pretty creepy. The creepiest part, though, is apparently this happens to cops more than we know. When the clip was posted, someone on Reddit responded with their own experience in the service, and they wrote, "I've cleared some creepy buildings as a cop. The most unrealistic thing about this video is that they kept going. I remember clearing this abandoned plantation house that still had an alarm hooked up with my partner. As we cleared each room, we left the doors open so we knew we were cleared. Turned around after the last door and all the doors were shut. Noped on out of there. Makes a lot of sense. I would probably do the same." And if you're looking for way more videos about ghosts, goblins, ghouls, and basically everything freaky above the sun and below it, Top 5 Scary is the place to be. Hit that subscribe button, please tickle that little bell if you wouldn't mind, but do that after this video because we got way more ghost sightings coming up for you right now.
Coming in at number 4, back in the late 1930s, on an especially dark evening, a nun was driving a school bus filled with children home after a field trip. They were heading down Shane Road, but when approaching the railroad crossing, the bus abruptly stalled out on the tracks. Most of the students were sleeping, so the nun was quietly attempting to start the engine back up when a train emerged, seemingly out of nowhere, as its headlamp was burned out. Something that hopefully won't happen anymore. It was too late to evacuate the children as the train was moving way too fast. The nun, desperately and frantically, turned the key, making one last attempt to restart the bus, just as the train smashed through the bus, cutting it in half. The nun was thrown through the windshield but miraculously survived. The rest of the folks on the bus weren't as fortunate and passed from the event. A few weeks later, the nun, guilt-ridden and heartbroken, returned to the site of the accident, filled with guilt and wanted to end her life. She parked her car on the tracks and sat there, waiting for the next train to come along. Later, when a train came into sight, speeding down towards her, in the same way as that tragic night, the nun began to hear some familiar voices. Then, her car began to move forward as if it was being pushed from behind, rolling to safety just as the train passed by. In disbelief, the nun got out of her car and began looking around, expecting to find some sort of good Samaritan, but didn't see a single person. She looked back at her car and noticed child-sized handprints on the back of her trunk and realized that the ghosts of her students had saved her life. The nun was then blessed with a new purpose in life, and she opened a school for orphans, teaching there for the rest of her days. It is said that to this day, if anyone parks their car on or near the railroad tracks at Shane Road, ghostly children will push the vehicle to safety, as they are determined to make sure that no one meets the same gruesome fate that they suffered. Many locals have made claims that say that you can hear the rumbling sounds of a train nearing, the steam whistle howling, and the screeching of wheels as if the train is grinding to a halt, but nothing is there at all, except for the haunting chill of the night. One of the children from this accident is more, shall I say, social than the others, and sometimes tries to find her way home. Not long after these initial incidents, a woman was driving down Shane Road late one night, and as she approached the railroad crossing, she saw a little girl standing all alone on the side of the road, holding a teddy bear. Now this woman immediately stopped, pulled over, and offered the girl a ride home. Once they arrived at the girl's house, the child was hesitant to leave the vehicle and to head inside. The woman assumed that the girl must have run away from home after a fight with her parents and offered to head to the house first to reassure the family. When the woman got out of the car, she looked back to give the child a reassuring smile, but the girl had completely vanished. She quickly reopened her car door, but no one was there. However, the seatbelt was still fastened. The photo evidence we have from this tale shows the little girl waiting by the tracks, just wanting to get home.
Number 3, The Fallen Angel. Up next on our collection of captivatingly horrifying clips that'll make true believers out of the most determined skeptics is this clip uploaded to YouTube called Fallen Angel of Catalonia. Certainly a bold name and also a pretty good name for like a deathcore band if you're looking for one. Near the village of Campdevenol, that's not at all how you say that. Near the village of Campdevenol, I think, a group of paranormal investigators are pursuing a lead. Hearing that there was sightings of something bizarre in the nearby area, they go bringing a camera, hoping to document the truth of what they find, not knowing the danger they would soon find themselves in. During the video, you can make out what looks to be discarded white feathers floating around in the breeze around where they saw the creature, leading to the belief that it was a fallen angel. Now, in the video, the investigators are speaking Spanish, but luckily, Spanish, what with being a language that a lot of people speak, we can translate pretty easily. They're talking sarcastically about how this is such an incredible experience and asking if you see the feathers that are floating all around. The pair of investigators, though, they then come across something lurched over, lurking in the dark, a pale, sickly looking skeletal creature. Seems like the skin is hanging off of rotten bones with piercingly white, ethereal glowing eyes, screeching. It's the kind of monster that would not look out of place in the hollowed halls of the SCP Foundation. Screeching, it sends the investigators fleeing away. Now, was this a real clip or was this filmed intentionally? I don't want to burst your bubble too much, but if you do a bit of digging on this, you can pretty easily find a making of the Fallen Angels of Catalonia video, and I will say that not a lot of true paranormal experiences have a documentary explaining how they filmed their process. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that one was for fun. Did you have fun? I had fun. Number 2, Bionicles. I feel like if you're a certain age, I can say the word Bionicle, and it'll inspire a sense of ferocious passion in your heart. We all love Bionicle, and for good reason. It was probably the coolest toy line maybe ever. I was obsessed with them as a young scrapper. as my parents can probably attest by the 3,000 little pieces that are living in their house somewhere. Biomechanical robots with lore based on Maori culture. Oh, the boys at LEGO were cooking with that. I'm not gonna act like I didn't cry when Takua put on the Mask of Light. I'm a big enough man to admit that. Alright, all of this aside, all this waxing poetic about Bionicle, all of those guys are apart somewhere, which might be a good thing, because if this video is any indication, spirits seem to be able to latch onto a Bionicle. Check out this wild footage of a haunted Bionicle moving its head. Look real close, it's pretty subtle. I had to watch it a few times because I wasn't getting it at first, but when you do, it's gonna make you recoil. I got a little bit of context provided by the original uploader too. First of all, I've never believed in ghosts, and I don't consider my home creepy. I know the land doesn't have dark history or anything, but ever since we moved in, we've experienced some strange things. The weirdest thing is one that involves our old toys. One recurring thing we've heard tons of times is the sound of someone digging through Lego pieces upstairs. It's a very distinct noise. We started recording to try and get this noise, and that's when we all noticed that a large Bionicle in the back of the closet turns its head towards us right as we're leaving. So what do you all think, my friends beyond the screen? Is this proof of a poltergeist with a bit of a nostalgic kick looking to save Maranui from darkness? Is the Bionicle itself coming to life? I think we need more poltergeists out there who just want to like kick back and play with Lego instead of haunting you. I'm willing to bet more poltergeists are like that than you think. Just want to vibe out, have a little fun. And number 1, the basement. Coming up at our final spot today is this video uploaded to YouTube a few years back, which has been making the rounds around the paranormal sides of the internet recently, titled Real Life Paranormal Activity Caught on Camera. I love when the title promises something bold. We get treated to a picturesque first-person walking view of a beautiful mid-century modern home, let me just say, being walked around by someone maintaining the property. In the video description, he mentions that he thinks he's caught a squatter living in the home he's working on. And in a way, it seems like he's correct, just not the kind of squatter he was expecting. It's not a corporeal one. As he walks around the house, there's a sense of dread and you know nothing good is coming. But then he opens the basement door, starts calling out who's there like he's in Luigi's Mansion. No one answers him directly, but as he calls out in fear, we see the lights from down below in the basement start to flicker. And this is around where I would have noped out of there completely. Some force of nature from this world or another collides with the man recording the video, causing him to drop his phone and realistically dash on out of there, fleeing the scene, leaving behind the camera staring up at the ceiling as we're left wondering. I would super recommend watching this whole one. It's actually genuinely one of the scarier videos I've seen, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a scary YouTube host. It was actually downright freaky. When the recorder leaves and the camera's just left running, I actually felt like genuinely kind of lonely and scared. Like I was worried something was gonna happen if he didn't come back.
Kicking off at number 5, body of a pig. Demon, ghost, spirit. This one's for you to decide, but according to paranormal investigator Devin Raymond, who uploaded this video to his own personal channel way back in 2007, whatever it is has a special message for all of us. Did you catch that? Well, first let's talk about the bizarre mystery that surrounds this particular paranormal instance, which was filmed at an undisclosed location during Devin's tenure as resident paranormal expert with an organisation that has since disappeared. In this video, Devin allegedly uses EVP technology, or electronic voice phenomena, a process that purportedly can pick up the audio communications of paranormal entities. Let's listen again. Yeah, what do you think of that? Next up at number 4, the Ghost Girl. Now, there's not a lot to this video other than to show you, because in actuality this is a very brief glimpse from a very short video that nevertheless captured something or someone not of this world. Well, either that or there's small children roaming around abandoned houses out in the deep woods, which is equally as concerning. In 2010, YouTuber Car Records uploaded a short 2-minute clip of 2 friends exploring an abandoned house out in the woods of northern Ukraine when they came across something lurking in the corner that they didn't quite expect. After initially being startled by something not so apparent, the uploader later slowed the video footage down to capture the face of what appears to be a young girl. Now I get it, a lot of this video is exposition and people have claimed that the girl is just a photograph or a cardboard cutout, but I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure I saw that thing blink. What do you guys think?
Our next weird clip for you is going to be this footage that was uploaded to the Ghosts subreddit. It's got investigators talking and viewers pausing to try and understand just what's going on. And a shout out to the Ghosts subreddit. Thanks for doing most of the heavy lifting on my job. Now you might think that ghosts and spirits only come out to play at night, but when the weather's nice, even the ghosts and ghouls and all things malevolent come out to soak up some rays. Let's give that clip a quick watch. Did you see it? Kinda hard not to. The white specter rushing by the side of the house. The user posted this with the caption, "Coworker caught this outside of his house and we're speechless," and it's easy to see why. What is it that's been caught on camera sprinting by that house? Now there's definitely something mysterious here. I get the same vibe off this mysterious entity that I do like the Fresno night crawlers, to shout out one of my favorite cryptids and unknown paranormal mysteries. I can't explain what's happening, and I know there's probably a reasonable scientific explanation, but I'm not finding it right now. Now not everyone is as convinced as me. I'm very easily swayed. Some commenters had suggested that perhaps this could be a small animal like a monkey running by really fast, or a parrot flying by really, really fast. You'll have to let us know down below in the comments whether or not you think this was proof of a spectral entity caught on security, or if this is just a funny little creature monkeying around. For what it's worth, and I think we should take this seriously, I think a monkey could be a ghost. As far as I know, monkeys can become ghosts. I've never seen someone disprove this. I've never seen someone prove this either, but this might be that proof we need.
In second place, we have Johnny Johnson. While Toys R Us may no longer exist as a physical store in the United States, I think, I'd like to travel back to the 70s when it did. Located in Sunnyvale, California. No, not Sunnydale. No Hellmouth here, I don't think. Toys R Us decided to build a store over the property of a former ranch. Honestly, pretty normal sounding so far, right? Staff and customers alike began to report multiple incidents of what they believed to be a haunting, ranging from hearing their names whispered to them, or feeling cold breezes, and seeing objects moving around on their own. The woman's bathroom, in particular, seemed especially spooky because the sink's faucet taps would turn on by themselves. Oh, and some female employees said they experienced what felt like some invisible being playing with their hair, which... In 1978, psychic Sylvia Brown held a seance there for the first time, determined to identify the entity. The ghost haunting the store allegedly revealed himself as Johnson. Johnson's ghost told Brown that he was a preacher and a ranch hand in the 1880s on what was then the Murphy family farm. He spoke with a mild Swedish accent, and his first name was either John, Jan, or Johan. 10 out of the 16 people assembled there for the seance said they heard a high buzzing noise when Sylvia was supposedly listening to the ghost. The ghost told her that he had been in love with Murphy's daughter Elizabeth, who ran off with an East Coast lawyer. Old news clippings say that Johnson accidentally hacked his leg with an axe while carelessly chopping down trees and met his end from the injuries. Sylvia repeatedly went back to the Toys R Us to communicate with Johnny, who she called the most stubborn, ornery, argumentative ghost she'd ever met in her book, stating that she had tried many times to explain to him that his lifetime as Johnny Johnson had ended. Apparently Johnny got so frustrated about being told that he had passed that he gave her the ultimatum that if she ever brought it up again, he would go silent. Sylvia let the matter drop since she and the ghost supposedly had a quasi-friendship where they would chat about the annoying and noisy kids who frequented the store. A 2007 piece on Snopes, which if you're unaware of, is a pretty legitimate fact-checking site, featured a woman named O'Brien who had worked at the store for over 18 years stocking shelves, claiming that she didn't believe in ghosts, but when you feel a breeze behind you or someone calls your name and there's nobody there, funny things happen that she just couldn't rationally explain. The report talked about dolls and toy trucks leaping off the shelves, balls bouncing down the aisles, and children's books falling off the racks. Baby swings would move on their own. The folks at Toys R Us say they've tried to explain it logically, but they've got nothing. Johnny was captured on camera in 1978, casually leaning against the shelves while the group that was there for the seance is shown sitting. Now that the store is no longer a Toys R Us, it has housed a Spirit Halloween, which feels fitting for some weird reason.
Number 1, the Arizona truck ghost. You ask any man of the road, ask them if they've ever seen anything strange up there, and they'll tell you everything. And this next clip is just more fuel for that fire. William Church is a truck driver who was driving down Arizona State Route 87 on March 11th, and he saw something he couldn't explain. And this time, it wasn't just the heebie-jeebies from one too many coffees and a Slim Jim for breakfast. He spotted something spectral on the road that was recorded by his dash cam, and he thinks this translucent figure was something not of this this world. You can see the lines through the legs making a figure, Church told Fox News. Now there are some locals who believe that the highway itself is haunted. It was first built in 1927 and stretching across approximately 273 miles, there's a good bit of tragic history on Route 87. It's been described as one of Arizona's most treacherous roads, and as such, countless fatal car accidents have occurred on this particular stretch of land. Could it be that because of this, there's spirits still trapped on the long, lonely road, wandering around looking for a home they'll never be able to return to? After Church's video was uploaded and went a bit viral, viewers reported that they'd seen a lot of supernatural activity around Arizona's highways. If I'm ever traveling through Arizona, I think I will take a boat. Perhaps. One of Arizona's many plentiful boats for its vast and teeming rivers and lakes. That's what everybody knows about Arizona. It's a really wet state, right? Really wet state.
Coming in at number 5, we have The Woods. This video was taken by a man named Carlos from Barcelona in 2016, who would often film himself while on hikes in the forest at night. Since recording this video, Carlos has not gone on a nighttime hike since. So, let's proceed. The video begins with Carlos walking down a pitch black trail before hearing twigs breaking all around him. If that wasn't spooky enough, he begins to turn his camera from ahead of him to behind him, and once again ahead of him. However, when the camera faces front, we can see a figure in the darkness dressed in black with white hands and a white face. Carlos turns and begins to run, as you would. He makes it to a clearing before stopping and panning the camera down, where we can clearly see the figure, once again, this time standing next to 3 cement blocks and staring up at Carlos. Carlos moves once again and this time takes a seat. Not sure why, but once again the figure emerges from a clearing. Thankfully though, Carlos finds a hole in the side of a cliff that he crawls into. He waits before peeking out and seeing that the coast is clear. So he exits. However, when he turns around to face the hole he just crawled out of, the face of a woman can be seen. Carlos runs and he never looks back. Why would you ever go on a nighttime hike in the first place and record yourself? It is beyond me. What do you guys think though? Do you believe this video is real, or is Carlos fooling us all? Classic Carlos. Coming in at number 4, girls see ghost and run. Now this video begins with a mother filming her 2 daughters who are seemingly eating dinner at a small child-sized dinner table. It's quite adorable actually, but I digress, because suddenly the older daughter, who is facing the kitchen, which is pitch black, becomes very distressed, appearing to look off at something in the distance and crying. The other girl, who has her back facing the kitchen, turns around multiple times asking, "What? Seemingly seeing nothing from within the shadows. However, the older daughter is clearly distressed, looking back and forth between the kitchen and her mother, saying things like, "It scared me, I'm scared." The other sister attempts to reassure her, telling her everything's okay, but it doesn't seem to help. The mother keeps questioning her daughter as to why she is scared, but she doesn't give an answer. The young daughter, however, keeps looking back, sees nothing, and then begins to laugh like a crazy person, which is arguably one of the most terrifying parts of the entire video. Children laughing. Not for me. The mother asks once again, "What are you scared of?" with the daughter pointing to the shadows in the kitchen. However, it all becomes too much for the daughter, who breaks down in tears and leaves the table, heading over to her mother. The younger daughter once again turns around. This time though, she finally sees whatever it is her sister was so scared of, and screams a blood-curdling scream, shoving the table and running towards her mother. So what did the 2 girls see? We'll probably never know, and frankly, I don't think I ever want to know.
Coming in at number 3, ghost in the kitchen. You may have caught our poltergeist video from earlier this week, but there's one video that stood out as a little bit more unexplainable, shall we say, or explainable depending which way you look at it. Uploaded by YouTuber Je suis un petit pois in 2007, which, if my French is up to scratch, means I am a little pea, which captured footage from 2 days worth of film in Altrincham, Cheshire, at a suspected home under paranormal activity. Let's take a look. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit perplexed by this video. Yeah, I understand that it's an easy encounter to fake, but if we take the exposition into account, and this is the footage of 2 days worth of filming, then things get a little bit weird in that case. What do you guys think? Next up at number 2, something in the desert. Now, I'm not going to lie, this is possibly one of my favourite paranormal videos on the internet, purely for the fact it's completely and utterly mind-bogglingly weird. It's a simple premise: a group of young friends are driving a truck through a desert in Saudi Arabia when they stumble across a strange person, creature, entity. Well, of course, they whip out their phones and start filming, because that's exactly what people do in the 21st century. This footage was reportedly caught in the empty quarter desert south of Saudi Arabia, otherwise known as Rub al-Khali, the largest contiguous sand desert on the planet. I mean, it's not too hard to believe that there's something weird, strange, and unexplainable lurking far out there in the desert sands, correct? Let's hope we just never stumble across it. And finally, at our number one spot, the Gettysburg Ghosts.
There. See?
Uh-huh.
Look.
There's nobody there. I can't see.
Look.
Slated as the most authentic ghost footage of all time, I want you guys to watch through this whole clip and let me know what you think. It's one of those things that you really have to make your own mind up with, because it's either one or two ways, and I prefer not to sway you either one of those ways. But ultimately, this video captured something unexplainable. At least. Filmed by Delia and Tom Underwood way back when in November of 2001 at the site of the infamous Battle of Gettysburg of 1863, widely considered to be a turning point during the American Civil War. The couple allegedly have caught footage of the spirits of the soldiers slain during the battle as they march relentlessly through the woods. Watch the whole thing and you'll see what I'm getting at, and I'll leave it up to you to decide.
Number 5. Walking Dead. My first true tale of phantasmic terror comes to us from Reddit user Jalcott. Answering a question posed in the thread, nurses and doctors of Reddit, what's the weirdest and most paranormal thing you've ever experienced? Hospitals already seem pretty haunted as is, so it's no surprise that there was so many good answers. But Jalcott stood out. Take a listen. I'm a psychiatric nurse, and early on in my career, I worked at a residential mental health facility. One of our residents was an elective mute, which means that he didn't talk, but there was no medical reasoning as to why. He had spoken earlier in his life, and in fact seemed quite normal back then, with the exception of being close to 7 feet tall. He'd been raised in the deep south and joined the army when he was 19, but one night he vanished. He was declared AWOL, and eventually he was declared missing, and later officially declared dead. However, 10 years later, a 7-foot-tall man walked into a Virginia hospital ER in my part of the Midwest and said to the receptionist, "My name is Marion Deschênes, and I've been dead for 10 years. And according to the Redditor, those were the last words he ever spoke to anyone. He had shown up to the hospital covered in dust and wearing an old uniform that he'd been wearing the night he vanished. His social security had not been used at all, and he had no ID on him whatsoever. However, via fingerprints, they were able to identify him. The family was notified, but they said they had already grieved their lost man and that whoever was claiming to be him simply wasn't, and asked to never be contacted again." The nurse went on to add that Marion would pace all day, every day, moving his mouth in a way that looked like he was muttering to himself, but nothing came out when he moved his lips. He had an unnerving habit of throwing his head back with his mouth wide open as if he was laughing hysterically, but not so much as a breath could ever be heard. The nurse said she tried talking to him almost daily, and he would appear to listen, but only reacts by periodically throwing his head back in that laughter-mimicking way of his. Various medications and treatment plans were pursued, but nothing ever affected him. Therapy was tried as well, but all that would happen was Marion would just grin and start pacing again. She goes on to say that on her last day, she saw Marion pacing in the parking lot, throwing back his head to laugh. She closes by saying all those years she'd wondered, was he a ghost? And all those years later, she still doesn't know. Click through and listen to as many top 5 scary videos as your ears can handle. Moving on. Number 4, the things that go bunk in the night. Now you would never ever believe this, but our next story comes from Reddit as well. A similar thread, a similar question. What's the most paranormal thing you've ever experienced? Lots of good ones to pick from, but this one from Mad Rampager really stood out for me. I used to be in the military. The training camp bunk that we lived in was said to be haunted. Occasionally, our stuff would go missing and reappear in weird places, like under our bed or inside a bag that we'd zipped up and stuff. No big deal, right? Weird things happen, and I mean human error and all that. Well, then came the instance that freaked everybody out. It was night after lights out, and my friend was on his phone texting his girlfriend. Most of us had been drifting off to sleep and we were lying on our beds when suddenly my friend heard the shuffling of feet from the corridor. So, thinking that it was our sergeant, he quickly hid his phone under his pillow, rolled over on his side, and tried to get to sleep. What happened next still chills me to the bone to this day. While he pretended to sleep, he heard someone right behind him at the other end of the bed saying, "Don't worry, you can continue to pretend to sleep." I could have dismissed this as a figment of his imagination, except me and 5 other people around him heard it. Creepier still, there was no one there. And weirdly, it sounded like the voice of a young girl that had said it. For reference, our camp was in the middle of an island and was set up away from the main admin building. The island had been closed by the government for army training purposes for the past 15 years, so there were definitely no civilians around, let alone any children. To make matters freakier, when we came back from our weekend home leave, there was a bunch of hair on his bed, neatly bundled up, long and jet black, and underneath his pillow was a note. "Remember me?" Now, as I said, we're in the middle of a forest, in the middle of an island, and at that point in time, there were no female recruits whatsoever on the island. Our bunks were locked for the weekend, and the duty sergeant had no idea what had happened. We never spoke about it again after that night, and it still chills me every time I think about it.
Coming in at number 3, we have The Abandoned House. A ghost hunter named Adventure Allah in Saudi Arabia filmed himself exploring a supposedly haunted house that is now completely abandoned. Now, I should preface this point by saying that viewers of this video have been quick to point out ghosts, jinns, demons, and even strange creatures lurking within the video. But the question is, can you spot them? Well, let's proceed. The video consists of the man exploring the abandoned home. However, throughout the video you can hear loud banging coming from different locations within the house. He roams around opening doors but seemingly finding no one. However, the banging continues. He follows the sounds, but they continue to avoid him, with the noises appearing in the previous location he was in. When he investigates, it disappears. However, arguably one of the scariest parts of the video comes when he hears a noise coming from inside a room, leading to a wardrobe. He attempts to open it, but to no avail. However, the doors then open and then seemingly close on their own. This continues for the duration of the video, with him catching seemingly stable and heavy objects moving around on their own, with loud banging coming from various parts of the house. What do you guys think though? Real or fake? Coming in at number 2, we have the Sally House. Now, this one comes to us from BuzzFeed Unsolved. For those who don't know, BuzzFeed Unsolved is a documentary web series that first aired on YouTube back in 2016 and has subsequently run for 11 seasons. The show follows Ryan Bergara and co-host Shane Madej, who discuss unsolved crimes, haunted places, alleged demonic possessions, and historical occurrences. Now, in this specific episode, they investigate the Sally House in Atchison, Kansas. Now, a quick backstory of the property. The Sally House was built in the mid-1800s and is believed to be haunted by a little girl named Sally, who died in the house during an appendicitis surgery. However, it is now believed that the house is haunted by multiple spirits and evil entities. The house is said to be the most haunted house in all of Kansas. As of today, it's standing vacant because nobody wants to live there. So, of course, this is the perfect location for Brian and Shane to visit. The pair head into the kitchen with a flashlight sitting on the kitchen counter. Shane continuously begs for any of the ghostly entities to turn on the light, while Ryan begs that they don't. Shane then says to the spirits, "If you don't like us, turn the lights on." The light then turns on out of nowhere. To make matters worse, they both approach the flashlight once again, stating, "Please turn the lights off, spirits." And what happens? The light goes off. Very creepy indeed. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Dalhousey Castle. Helen Parker is an Australian news reporter reporting from the Dalhousey Castle in Scotland, a castle which is notorious for being haunted. However, Helen, a skeptic, decides to explore the location alone to prove everybody wrong. When you think of an 800-year-old castle, you think ghosts, spirits lurking in the stone halls, distressed spirits haunting the tunnels. However, for Helen, she has never believed in ghosts or spirits. So, at 2 AM, she decides to go to the dungeons alone. Just her and her camera. Brilliant idea, Helen. Perfect. She sets up the camera facing a handful of tables, herself, and creepy looking armor. Helen herself is facing the only door in the room. She starts off by saying that there have been no signs of any ghostly entities in the dungeons, just as she predicted. However, Helen makes a terrible mistake by beginning to taunt the supposedly ghostly residents. She refers to the castle as hocus pocus before saying maybe there is no such thing as ghosts whatsoever. However, just moments later, Helen leans back in her chair, examines the room, before a handful of bangs can be heard from behind her. Helen then screams and runs from her chair. She then grabs her camera and leaves, telling the ghost, I'm going. So what exactly happened? According to Helen, during the experience, she felt, I quote, an intense electrical feeling down the right side of my face and head.
Kicking off our list, we have Claude Monet in 5th place. Yep, the famed artist himself. If you're not familiar with his work, I'd recommend looking up Impression Sunrise, which is the painting that gave the name to the French Impressionism art movement, or his Water Lily series. Most of his work is made up of stunning landscapes, but I think Woman with a Parasol is my personal favorite of his. But you all came here for a ghosty moment, not for me to wax poetic about art, so let's hop into it. In 2015, the Cleveland Museum of Art was installing a new temporary exhibit from the Royal Academy of Arts in London titled Painting the Modern Garden, Monet to Matisse. The director of architecture was taking photographs to make sure everything looked, according to plan, when she noticed a figure showing up on an empty balcony. The photo in question shows a man with a long white beard, sporting a hat like one Monet was fond of wearing, and looking very much like the artist who was fond of painting his gardens at Giverny. Oh, forgot to mention, Monet was a very passionate horticulturalist on top of being a fantastic painter. The public communications associate who made a public statement on the photograph, Kelly Notaro, has claimed time and time again that the photo is not a hoax, not retouched in any way, and that many more sightings of Monet have been reported since by guests visiting the exhibit. The museum is home to other ghosties as well, with stories told of a little boy running through the gallery dressed in fashions from 1916 and a man in gray staring at the portrait of Jean Gabriel before disappearing into it. Night guards have reported their flashlights flickering on and off in the West Wing, and there's a mirror where visitors report seeing a man standing, but when they turn around, no one's there. Fascinating to me that Monet chose a small museum in Cleveland to appear in, and not the Musée in Paris that's, dedicated to only his art. Maybe he felt cozy amongst all the other ghosts. Or perhaps he's traveling the world to make sure his art is safe? Let me know in the comments what you think. In 4th place, we have the Grey Lady of Hampton Court Palace. I guess I should probably introduce her formally to begin with, Dame Sybil Penn. She was a servant at Hampton Court to 4 Tudor monarchs, being the nurse of Prince Edward and also Elizabeth I, nursing her through smallpox before succumbing to it herself in 1562. Sightings of her ghost began being reported in 1829, when the church of the palace was rebuilt and her tomb was moved. I'd probably be ticked as well if I had been resting for that long and then was disturbed. I'm pretty cranky as a person if you wake me up from a deep sleep. Trust me. Once upon a time, I accidentally roared at a friend who was trying to wake me up. Not my finest moments. Anywho, soon after being so rudely disturbed from her grave, strange noises of a person working a spinning wheel were heard through a wall at Hampton Court, which led to the discovery of a previously unknown chamber containing an antique spinning wheel. My inner fairy tale nerd is screaming right now about Charles Perrault. Don't mind me. The photograph we're specifically discussing today was taken in 2015 by Holly Hampshire, age 12, who thought she was taking, a fairly routine picture of her cousin Brooke McGee, also 12, during a day out at the 16th century home while in the King's apartments. Just gotta capture those selfies. The girls didn't realize what they had encountered at the time and only made the discovery when looking through their photos a day later. Okay, now before anyone calls bull on this, it's pretty dang realistic. I know I still haven't looked through every photo I took on my most recent vacation, and those photos are almost a week old now. The photograph shows a tall woman with dark flowing hair, cloaked in a full-length black and gray gown. This is the only time someone has been able to successfully capture her on camera. She's been spotted many times over the years. Just don't confuse her with any of Henry VIII's wives, since they're also quite fond of haunting the place on a regular basis, with Jane Seymour and Catherine Howard being the most commonly spotted. Jane can be found on the Silver Stick Stairs, which once led to the room where she met her unfortunate end after giving birth to the perfect heir, while wild child Catherine can be heard screaming through the haunted gallery, where it's believed that she broke free of her guards after her initial arrest in a failed attempt to reach her husband to plead for her life. Hey, maybe the Now Museum should play host to a touring cast of 6 to see what'll happen. I'd be willing to fly out for that.
Number 3, old friends. Our next story is from a Reddit thread asking, what's your ghost story? And I gotta point this one out just because it was too funny, but the original poster included the title in brackets, serious, to deter any would-be paranormal pranksters. Just serious ghost stories, please. Luckily, Redditors obliged. User Barbed Cats shared this terrifying tale. When I was 37, I went to my high school reunion. I flew into the nearest airport and rented a car. The distance was about 35 miles through a very rural and almost abandoned part of the country. About 3 miles outside of town, I see someone on the side of the road flagging me down. Up in the North Woods, no one ever leaves someone else stranded, and it would turn out that the guy standing there was somebody I'd actually been to school with, my old friend Jim. Jim gets in the car and we start talking, catching up. I hadn't seen him in 20 years, but he still looked the same, maybe just a little bit older. We get to town and I ask him if he wants to come to the reunion with me and have a drink. He says no, just take me back home. Jim's parents had lived only a few blocks from my grandmother's, and I turned in that direction, but he said to take him to the part of town that really was just the outskirts, up by the fairground and the cemetery. There was a mobile home park out there, and I figured that must be where he lived. When we reached the end of the turn, he said, just drop me off here. It was nice to see you again, and he walked off into the night. So I went to the high school reunion, met up with some old classmates, and we start to talk. Now please understand me here. I am stone cold sober, nor do I ever take anything harder than soda. Tired after a 13-hour flight, but I was completely sober. As we were talking about who was showing up and who wasn't, I mentioned to my old classmate that I just picked Jim up a few miles off east of town and had dropped him up by the fairgrounds. Now for some reason everyone got really quiet. Even the guy belting out karaoke stopped, and my cousin went white as a shirt. Barb. Jim died 8 years ago. Rolled his car. I start to feel really dizzy, and I go out to the car to take some deep breaths and decide whether or not I'm going crazy. And there on the seat was a newspaper printed 8 years ago containing Jim's obituary. I still have that damn paper. Every now and again I take it out to stare at it, and I still wonder just what the hell happened that night. Number 2. Ghost on the line. The next story comes to us from a thread asking law enforcement officers of Reddit what is the creepiest call that you've ever been on. We get a very creepy answer from user Smokey Bonaparte sharing this creepy little tale. The Redditor writes, 911 dispatcher calling in. We received a call from an elderly lady who had trouble breathing. I had taken several calls from her before and her husband in the past, so I recognized the voice. I dispatched an ambulance to her residence and held her on the line trying to keep her calm while the ambulance was responding. Ambulances advised that they had a 15-minute ETA as she was in a very rural part of West Virginia. I'm talking to her just about her husband and how she was doing, and just making pretty standard small talk with her. The ambulance arrives and I let them know that she is in severe respiratory distress, and I still had her on the line. I let her know the ambulance is coming to her door to go answer the door, and she says okay and hangs up the phone. Oh, that's pretty normal, right? Well, here's where it gets very weird. The EMT and paramedic on scene call back about a minute after, and they say that no one is answering the door. We have a sheriff in the area pulling on scene about that time. The sheriff unit confirmed the address, and he's breaching the door to make access to the PT. 5 minutes go by, and the paramedic on scene radios to ask me who called. I tell him it was the elderly woman who lived on residence. He tells me he's going to call this in and he needs to speak with my shift supervisor. We get him over to the supervisor, and the supervisor confirms the same information I relayed, that it was all correct, and asks what's going on. Apparently the old woman had been dead for a while and was already in full rigor mortis. They thought I was wrong on the caller, but the other dispatchers played it back for them and confirmed it was the old woman who called. The ambulance transferred the hospital and we got the same calls and disbelief from the doctors. But I took a call from a ghost that day. Number 1. Uninvited Guest. Closing off our list is this story which chilled my spine like Sub-Zero. Coming to us from user Parole Model, which hey, by the way, love the pun. It was from an Ask Reddit thread asking, what's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you? Lots and lots and lots of good ones, but this one took the cake. So lend an ear. I used to visit my friend at her house out in a rural farming area before she moved. I'd sleep over a lot and we'd just hang out and draw. I usually slept in the living room and on the couch, and there were 2 mirrors in the room that were fairly close to the TV. When the TV was off and I was walking by, I started seeing shadows move behind me. I thought it might just be something off the TV screen, and then one evening I walked into the living room to get my sketchbook so I could sketch in her bedroom. I bent over and picked it up, stood up straight, and I looked in the mirror and saw a man behind me. A man standing in the hallway leading to the living room. He was average height, bald, and a bit old. I turned to look at him and no one was there. I turned to look at the mirror again and he was gone. I felt more than a little spooked. Another time we were just sitting in the living room and we heard what sounded like a kid's footsteps running across upstairs quickly. She had 2 adult siblings, but they were out at work leaving us all alone. Around that time I decided to sleep in my friend's room instead of the living room, only to wake up in the middle of the night to see 4 posters slowly get peeled off the wall. No, it wasn't just them falling and dragging each other down. It looked as if someone was carefully unsticking the tape and removing them. The next morning my friend put them back up saying, well, I need to get some better tape. She and her family eventually moved out because they couldn't afford to keep living there anymore. We'd never really talked about anything that had happened in that house, as if talking about it might actually make it worse. But after she moved, I finally confronted her and said it. I said, "Dude, your house was haunted. I hope you knew that." She replied, "Yeah, we knew it was. Some guy and his granddaughter used to live there, but he took her life and then took his own. So it was probably them or something. I never told you because I didn't want to scare you." Later, she would dig out a copy of a news article she got from a local paper about the crime. The picture that went with the article was the exact man I saw all those years ago. Number 5. The Invisible Guest. Our first clip today was posted to Reddit, and it's a delightfully strange one. It's CCTV footage of a security guard working in Buenos Aires at a hospital late at night around 3 a.m. Now, traditionally, that's kind of like the witching hour, but like no big deal or anything. Anyway, take a quick little look at the clip for us. We can see the security guard get up from his desk, clipboard in hand, opening the belt, even going so far as bringing in a wheelchair for this guest who doesn't appear to exist, at least not physically. Watch this clip as many times as you'd like, you'll never see who he's letting in because they just don't seem to exist at all. It's unsettling to say the least. Now, let's put on our rational caps and take a look at this. Let's give a little Scully approach. This could just be an extremely bored security guard working the graveyard shift at a hospital, doing anything to make himself entertained. I've worked long night shifts by myself, and let me tell you, I would do stupid stuff like this all the time just to keep myself entertained. Now, the Mulder approach, and that's why we're here, is that this could be any number of supernatural things. A ghost? Some sort of demonic entity possessing the security guard and making him open the door. It's the way the guard does it also routinely, as if he doesn't even realize anything is wrong or, nobody's there, that makes it so unsettling. And I think that's the word for this clip. It's unsettling. It's hard to describe. The clip went fairly viral for its bizarre nature, and the hospital clarified that the guard never registered a patient to enter. So either it was a prank or the demon just didn't have enough ID on it and just waltzed on in. So let me know what you all think. Is this a bored prankster or something supernatural piercing the veil? And if you're looking for a lot more strange security footage, cryptids, creatures, tales of the unknown, or tales of the very known, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some in spades. We've got just about everything scary you could possibly think of. So click on through, subscribe if you'd like, but stay watching this video, okay? Because we got way more scary stuff coming up for you in just a second. Number 4, a gnome. Our next clip looks like something out of the start of a low-budget, like A24 horror movie. I started watching this clip and I thought it was kind of boring, and then as soon as it got going, I literally pressed my nose to the computer screen, so I hope you do the same. This clip was posted to the subreddit Humanoid Encounters and explained that this had happened to their relatives, and they don't really know what's going on. But what we can see in the clip is bizarre. Someone is outside on their front porch, shining a light into the darkness, trying to find what is stalking them on their property. It can be a little hard to see, but behind this big rock we see what looks like tiny little hands peering out, trying not to be seen, playing a spectral game of hide and seek. It's really difficult to figure out what's going on in this clip. We only have this flashlight helping us out here, but it almost seems too like there may be more than one of these creepy little crawlies running around back there. The OP who posted the clip originally suggested that these creatures are indigenous folklore of little people, which interestingly is a myth that's surprisingly common across the globe, with cultures in Ireland, Greece, the Philippines, New Zealand, and Indonesia, to name a few, all having local legends about little people or gnomes or elves or things like that, creeping in the night. Don't you worry, that'll come up more later. Now, Scully mode for a second. This could extremely easily be someone's kids being told to play along for a prank, get some views, or even someone just hiding behind a rock playing with a doll, poking it out. The only evidence we have against this really is that the clip looks weird, and OP's word that they swear this is a close family member and wouldn't do this sort of thing. And going through the YouTube channel, you can see it's mostly just family videos, so it does make sense. So what do we think, YouTube comments? Little people creeping around, or is this a tall tale? As like a height pun. I don't know if everybody picked up on that. It's pretty smart.
In third place, we have the Brown Lady. I swear this isn't going to turn into a list of spooky ladies identified by the color of their gowns. I promise. According to legend, the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall is the ghost of Dorothy Walpole, the sister of Robert Walpole, who is generally regarded as the first Prime Minister of Great Britain. She was the second wife of Charles Townshend, who was notorious for his violent temper. The story says that when Charles discovered that his wife had committed adultery with Lord Wharton, he punished her by locking her in her rooms in the family home, which is You guessed it, Raynham Hall. She remained there until her death in 1726 from smallpox. The first recorded claim of a sighting of the ghost was by Lucia C. Stone during a gathering at Christmas of 1835 when she observed the brown lady because of the dated dress she wore. The following evening, another guest claimed to have seen the brown lady again, later reporting that on this occasion he was drawn to the specter's empty eye sockets, which were dark in the glowing face. These sightings led to some staff permanently leaving Raynham Hall, and you know what? Valid. The next reported sighting was made in 1836 by Captain Frederick Marriott, a good friend of Charles Dickens and the author of a series of popular sea novels. It is said that Frederick specifically requested that he spend the night in the most haunted room of Raynham Hall to prove his theory that the haunting was caused by local smugglers to keep people away from the area, and not by an actual ghost. The first 2 nights he slept with a personal safety bang device under his pillow and encountered nothing. If you didn't get what I'm referring to, just ask someone in the comments. On the third night, his final evening, 2 young men knocked at his door very late at night as he was undressing to go to bed and asked him to step over to their room at the other end of the corridor and give them his opinion on a collector's item that had just arrived. As they were leaving the room, he brought his personal safety device, joking that it was in case he met the brown lady. When the inspection of the item was over, the young men declared that they would accompany him back, joking yet again about the brown lady. And this is where I warn y'all, if you tempt fate, fate will deliver. The corridor was long and dark, since the lights had already been extinguished by that point in the night, but as the group reached the middle of the corridor, they saw the glimmer of a lamp coming towards them from the other end, and assumed it was from one of the women in the home visiting a nursery. For context, the bedroom doors in that corridor faced each other, and each room had a double door with a space between, as is the case in many old-fashioned homes. Frederick felt uncomfortable being undressed around women, so out of modesty, slept within one of the outer doors with the guys, in order to conceal himself until the lady should have passed by. As my roomie would say, what a distinguished gentleman. He watched her approaching nearer and nearer through the crack of the door until she was close enough for him to distinguish the colors and style of her outfit, and he recognized the figure as the brown lady. He had his finger on the trigger of his device and was about to demand that the ghost stop and give the reason for its presence there when the figure halted of its own accord before the door, and while holding the lighted lamp she carried to her features, grinned in a malicious and diabolical manner at him. Ooh la la. This act infuriated Frederick, prompting him to leap into the corridor and discharge the device in her face. The figure instantly disappeared in the tiny, kaboom, passed through the outer door of the room on the opposite side of the corridor and lodged in the panel of the inner one. Frederick never attempted to interfere again, so I'll give him a common sense point for that. The brown lady was caught on camera on September 19th of 1936 when Captain Hubert C. Provand, a London-based photographer working for Country Life magazine, and his assistant, Indre Shira, were taking photographs of Raynham Hall for an article. They claimed that they had already taken a photograph of the hall's main staircase and were setting up to take a second when Indre saw a vapory form slowly taking on the appearance of a woman moving down the stairs towards them. Captain Hubert quickly took the cap off the lens while Indre pressed the trigger to activate the camera's flash. Later, when the negative was developed, the now famous image of the brown lady was revealed. The ghostly experience and photograph of the brown lady was published in Country Life magazine on December 26th of 1936, January 4th, 1937 edition of Life magazine. In second place, we have a photo of John DeFeo. Now y'all know how much I love talking about Ed and Lorraine Warren's cases, so this should come as a shock to no one. If anyone needs a quick briefing on the Amityville Horror House and not the movie, here goes it. On November 13th of 1974, during the very early morning hours, Ronald DeFeo Jr. ended his entire family and claimed that the demonic voices told him to do it. I'm talking both parents and 4 siblings. Look, I can't say that I've never joked about ending family members when I'm frustrated, but this is a bit too extreme for my liking. Oh, and about a year after that slaughter, a new family moved into the home, but fled after just 28 days, claiming it was haunted beyond any way to live in it, describing slime oozing from the walls, windows that would suddenly shatter, instances of levitation, and more. I'd be here for like an hour if I went into full detail. The image I'd like to highlight today was captured by Gene Campbell, a professional photographer who was part of the team who worked with paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were called in by the Lutz family during the horrors they experienced while, still trying to live in the home. Gene had set up an automatic camera that took infrared pictures to capture the second floor landing during the night. It features what appears to be a young boy with white eyes, believed to be John, who is peeking out of a doorway. George Lutz revealed the Amityville Ghost Boy photo. George Lutz revealed this photo on the Merv Griffin Show back in 1979, 3 years after it was taken. In first place, we have Mary Lee of Waverly Hills Sanatorium. In the early 1900s, the warm, wet weather of Kentucky was the perfect breeding ground for tuberculosis, pushing all of the local hospitals' capacities way past their breaking point. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium first opened its doors on July 26 of 1910 as a two-story wooden structure built to house about 50 patients, but in October of 1926, the hospital had expanded to a 400-bed capacity to accommodate a continual influx of patients as a now 5-story facility. The sanatorium first opened in the midst of a widespread epidemic, and we all know how epidemics and pandemics go, right? Because of the highly contagious nature of the disease, extreme quarantine measures were required for patients and staff alike, meaning Waverly Hills had to function as an isolated island. The self-sufficient facility produced its own food, raised animals, and ran a functioning post office. Also featured a 500-foot-long tunnel that traveled from the first floor of the building to the bottom of the hill. Supplies could be brought in from the bottom, and the countless bodies of deceased patients were discreetly removed from the top. With the eventual introduction of a vaccine, case numbers plummeted, and in 1961 the sanatorium was officially closed, but the pain and suffering of so many souls has left a permanent mark upon the site, and that's where we come in. The photo in question was taken on September 10th of 2006 by Tom Halstead during an overnight investigation of the facility by Missouri Paranormal Research on the 4th floor of the main hospital building at around 7 a.m. If you'd like me to be technical about it, the camera used was a Pentax K1000 35mm film camera with a ProMaster 56000 extendable flash. Black and white 400 ISO film was used, and according to data provided, the camera settings were at about 1/60th of a second speed with an f-stop of 5.6. As one can see, on the right of the frame there appears to be the apparition of a young woman with dark hair and a white nightgown or dress. With the death toll from the institution being well into the thousands, one could worry that she would never be identified. But we do have a lead. She is believed to be a young girl named Mary Lee, based on a photograph that was found of a similar looking girl signed "Love Mary Lee" on the back. One source claims that she is the legendary nurse who allegedly went the way of the rope necklace in room 502 after learning she was pregnant by a doctor and had tuberculosis. If you visit the sanatorium today for one of their ghost walks, you'll be sure to encounter her amongst the spooky residents that never left.
Kicking off at number 5, Wentworth Woodhouse. Back in December of 2017, a group of investigators known as Soul Reaper Paranormal headed out to Rotherham, South Yorkshire to Wentworth Woodhouse, a 17th century private estate that is notorious as a paranormal hotspot. The paranormal investigation team did an entire sweep of the 23,000 square yard building, but within just 2 minutes of being there, they caught this perplexing footage. Allegedly, the team described the apparition as being the same height as a child, and after standing in direct view of the cameraman, appeared to float through the wall as if trying to lead the team in a certain direction. The team described the spirit as being awash with residual energy, which is interesting because the majority of these apparitions can be explained away as a lens flare or a flicker of light, but in this case, the shape still holds its form even though when the footage is inverted. Interesting, right? Well, what do you guys think? Next up at number 4, sounds from the basement. Admittedly, this is an audio video, so I'll give you fair credit for feeling a little cheated. However, the content of this minute-long YouTube video is so strangely disturbing that I just had to make this list. Published over a decade ago in 2007, YouTuber Don Garvey responded to a homeowner that had regularly heard strange, unsettling noises coming from their basement, and so, along with the paranormal investigation team, set up some rudimentary audio recording equipment in the basement to see what was going on. After 3 days of capturing no compelling explanation, on the 4th night, just after 3 AM, they realised that there was something down there making an otherwise otherworldly racket. Now, Don has defended this footage for over a decade, regularly explaining that the footage was completely unedited other than being amplified, and maintaining that he still has no explanation for the ghostly sound. Either he's got one hell of a poker face, or he really did capture the wailing of a disturbed spirit.
Number 3, creature prowling. This next clip was originally posted to TikTok and then made its way over to the subreddit High Strangeness, which I definitely recommend if you're looking for a little weird stuff in your day-to-day. Extremely fitting title because I don't think there's anywhere else this could have been posted. The footage comes to us from the Philippines and was seen late at night by a group of friends walking home. You ready for it? Here you go. So, as you could probably see in the clip, there is something horrifying prowling around on top of this roof. It certainly looks human, but looking human is an easy trick, although this creature doesn't seem like it has that one down 100% just yet. It needs a little work on its human impression. The eyes are glowing, peering out at you. The eye shining is what really gets me about this clip. It's very creepy, reminds me more of a cat or a dog's eyes when being recorded in the night than it does any human. Could this possibly be a skinwalker mid-transformation that's been caught attempting to disguise itself? It definitely fits the bill of a creature walking like an animal but looks like a human. It almost looks too like it's sussing out its options, waiting for the right moment to pounce down. Now, let's get rational, get our Scully hat on. The most likely, if not uncomfortable possibility, is that this could just be someone under the influence of one or all of the substances who's having a really bad night. However, it could also be something paranormal, supernatural, creeping around caught on camera, imitating a human being. Is this someone wearing the skin of a person, or just someone having a night they're not going to remember for a few weeks? You let me know, because I could go either way on this one. Number 2, a ghost. Coming up next is this clip that was making the rounds of an Instagram user going live. The user was complaining that he had seen something strange earlier in the day. He had mentioned that he had seen what he believed to be a dog man that he thought he saw, a fairly popular cryptid that gets mentioned every now and again and has been kind of picking up in popularity lately. He was talking on the live and then happened to hear something strange outside, so naturally he went to go look, and the results were horrifying. Let's watch the clip. Did you see it? Well, we can roll it again if you didn't. At around a minute into the clip, when the user was going live, he hears something strange and goes in to check on what it was, and we see something rush by, if only for a second, that doesn't look like it came from this world even a little bit. It looks like a tall creature running by on its hind legs, and I'm gonna be honest, I immediately thought it was a werewolf. It kinda has that werewolfy vibe. Here's the thing about this one. Either this video is one of the best fakes I have ever seen, with a fantastic creature effects budget and some real impressive practical effect wizardry, and it's got an actor who really knows how to sell being scared, or this is actually something that happened to a real terrified guy and we caught his reaction live. I think it being on Instagram Live lends a little bit of credibility, I think, since it makes these things a lot harder to fake when you have to do it live. Ask any stage production. The thing doesn't seem like it's someone in a costume either. The silhouette looks all wrong. It really just does look like it was a werewolf caught on tape. Scully mode. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I have one. Molder mode. That is a werewolf. Full stop. That's a real werewolf. Why don't you all let me know down below in the comments what we think that might be down there, but that's a werewolf. I don't know if you're gonna be able to convince me otherwise. At number 1, the Costa Rica creature. Now, I spent a long time looking at some weird CCTV footage, door cam, blurry cell phone footage, trying to find something just weird and freaky to show you all for this video, and well, I think I've saved the best for last here. This footage was captured from a ring light security camera, and it's maybe one of the scariest things I've seen in a hot minute. Now, you take a little look-see for me, and I don't blame you at all if you need to scroll down to hide in the comments. It's safe there. Huh? What'd I tell you? Pretty weird clip? We can see a dog barking repeatedly at something outside, and at first I rolled my eyes because I thought, hey, this isn't anything supernatural, this is just 2 dogs barking at each other. Until I watched the clip over again and I realized what the dog was barking at is absolutely not a dog breed from this planet. No, we see something absolutely horrifying crawling around looking like a spider, like it just came out of Dead Space. The way the dog is barking really makes me stressed too. It's not just barking at something odd, it is freaking out and shrieking and screaming, and it seems panicked and scared and trying to let everyone in the neighborhood know that something deeply evil is around. This is one of those things where I look at it and rationally I want to say that this is just someone messing around, having fun, doing something for views, trying to get viral on TikTok. I'm having trouble being rational here. I just fully believe this might actually be a demonic entity that someone caught on camera, and personally I am extremely glad it is absolutely nowhere near me. Now, if you need me, I need to go watch some videos of, like, I don't know, cats being funny or something. Can we throw maybe a cat or 2 up at the end? A nice cute little guy, little palate cleanser for everybody.